Thank you everyone for joining. So welcome back to day 2 of our workshop on resume, LinkedIn, and interview preparation. Last week, like I said, we started with resume and LinkedIn, and we learned a whole lot, do's and don'ts regarding to how your resume should look like, as well as your LinkedIn, right? And so many questions were asked, and again, the facilitator was able to nail all those questions. And from the comments and from the engagement, we understood that so many things were shared, and it was really insightful and powerful, right? And today we are going to be starting with interview preparation. I mentioned that when you learn how to structure your resume, you learn how to make your resume marry with your LinkedIn. It's a good thing to do all those. But believe me, when the interview knock on your door and you are being asked, oh, we are going to be scheduling you for an interview, so and so time. And if you are not prepared, you don't know how to position yourself, and you don't know what kind of questions you might possibly be going through and how you can fine-tune tell your story. Because when it comes to interview, it's all about storytelling, right? And if you don't know how to tell those stories, it's very hard for the recruiters or the hiring managers to even have that listening ear and say they want to give you the job. And so many other things comes in between. And today we are going to be nailing all those things, those concerns that we might have. I know that so many of us are in different fields. Whichever field you are today, this is also a safe space for you to ask whatever questions that you might have. So please get your questions ready. At some point, we will give you opportunity to ask your questions. But if you feel like you're going to forget them, we always advise that you drop it in the chat. In that way, it's easier for you to remember. We don't want you to forget anything, right? And again, when you want to ask your questions, maybe you want to unmute yourself. Please always use the reaction button. Beneath your Zoom, you're going to see what it says react based on my own system. When you click on that sign, it shows you different emojis, and you will see the one that will say raise your hand. And on that note, we will be able to know that you have 1 or 2 questions to ask. We have the recording for the last week, a week today. It's already uploaded in our YouTube channel. Go to our YouTube channel, be able to familiarize yourself, and also learn more about what we did last week. That will also help you for today's section as well. And we are going to be diving right into it. So we have our facilitator who is going to be taking us on today's workshop, just like last time. And we have no other person than Ominini. And he did awesome last week, Thursday. And I'm believing that today is going to be amazing, right? So please, everyone, join me while we welcome him. And please, let's keep ourselves muted and don't allow anything to be a distraction for you, because you really need this section, all right? Thank you so much, Ominini. I give it to you.
But thank you, Wendy, and thank you to the WinTech community for having me again. Excited to be here with you all for the second session of this Stand Out and Get Hired workshop series. So I've seen some familiar names and I've seen some new ones. So like Wendy said last week, it was focused on the resume and the LinkedIn, which I mentioned it's the tip of the iceberg, right? It's what's visible to people from the outside. But today we'll focus on interview preparation, which is kind of a part of the bottom of the iceberg, and is where you have your first opportunity to close the deal on those opportunities you're applying to. So today we'll cover some important strategies and some common interview questions. I said it's going to be interactive, so we're going to run some mock scenarios that will hopefully help you feel more confident when going into interviews. Before we get into the mock scenarios, I want to give you guys something to at least have written down in terms of things to do when you have an interview or you're applying for jobs. So one, it's very important. I cannot stress it enough to research the company you're applying to and the role you're applying for, right? If you don't understand the job description and how your experience meets it, it's going to be hard for you to make a solid impression in an interview. Now, the interview starts even before you log into Zoom or MS Teams or in person to meet with the hiring manager. In my opinion, the interview starts when the recruiter or the HR person calls you to book the interview. The interview has already started. The way you treat that person dictates the future of, the role that you're applying to. So be nice, be personable, engage them in a conversation. don't forget you're still selling yourself during that phone call. Now, the main thing I want you all to take home today for interview is have a script written down. Have a script for your personal pitch when they ask you for who you are. Have a script for all the common interview questions and practice them. Practice, practice, practice. That's the only way you can manage anxiety and reduce your nervousness. But also it's the only way you can execute at the interview with zero mercy for your competition. And I say that intentionally because don't ever think you're interviewing and you're the only person the hiring manager is interviewing. It's very, very, very few opportunities happen that way where you're the only person selected for an interview. You're always, always, always interviewing against somebody. And even when you're the only one interviewing for a role, you're interviewing about against the possibility of the hiring manager deciding not to do anything. So, like I said, have a script and practice, refine it, from interview to interview, but also practice it so it's like second nature. So you're not like looking at a piece of paper and answering, and you're all nervous, you forget one word or one sentence, and it's messes up the whole thing. So, and obviously dress appropriately and show up early. Those are very important things to have for an interview. Now, I said it's going to be interactive, so I'm going to need some volunteers, at least 5. I have 5 common questions that I'd like to run through. So ideally, we have some people volunteer, or we can name names, and have people practice. The idea is for you to have a safe space to practice what you will answer to some of these common questions, right? It's also for you to see what I'm going to do as well is after you give an answer, I'll provide feedback, but I'll also provide what I'll call your competitor's answer. It's like, so this is what your competition is when you're interviewing for a role. This is what their answer might sound like. And then you'll have to be the judge of if you'll hire yourself or you'll hire your competitor, right? That's how this session typically goes. It's a fully interactive session. I don't have slides. So I'm going to need some volunteers who want to practice their interviewing skills. What I'll do, I'll kind of go through what the mock scenario is going to look like. So ideally we get 5 people, 1 person per question, or if we have someone who is brave enough to power through all 5, that could work as well. But we'll be going over the following questions that are very common, but very easy to get tripped up when these questions come at you. So the first one is obviously tell me about yourself, right? So how do you introduce yourself? How do you pitch yourself? Especially when you're pivoting from one industry to another, how do you present that to a hiring manager in a way that's cohesive, that makes sense, that will get them interested in continuing the conversation with you? The next question that typically will always follow that is, can you describe your prior experience, or tell me about any experience you have that's relevant for the job, or something along that line? But typically the interest, what are you doing now, or what did you just finish doing, and how does that apply to this role? That's typically the spirit of that question. Based on last week, I know a lot of people here are in the functional space, so BAs, PMs, Scrum Masters, and things like that. So in those interviews, especially some of the ones I've sat in on for, consulting roles, one of the things that comes up quite often is, how do you handle changes during the project life cycle, right? How do you handle the change when, project scope changes, or maybe budget gets cut and you have to restructure, different things like that. How do you handle that? That's another common question that we see in that space. And then clients typically want to know what your experience is like working on a challenging project. Every client believes that their project is complex or it's challenging. So this is where you start to give those examples. When they mention storytelling, it's a very important skill in interviewing. So if the client asks you, can you give an example of a challenging project you worked on and how you overcame those challenges? It is very common in the interview world, not just for functional skill sets and things like that. It comes up quite often. Now, this one is more for my BAs here. Is like, how do you ensure that the requirements you gather are accurate and complete? I'm trying to understand what's your process. Like, how do you go through your day to day? Do you just check the box, or right? That's what that question typically is looking for. And then I'll say my last question there is around conflicts management. How do you deal with difficult stakeholders? How do you handle conflicts between different stakeholders? That's another very important question that typically comes up. So can I ask you, any takers, anybody who wants to volunteer to walk through any of these questions can put their hands up. If there's one that maybe has come up in interviews for you that you've struggled with, feel free to let me know and we can work through that question as well. My answer to that question, what that might look like is, yes, I'd love to tell you about myself. Why did I start like that? It buys me a couple seconds to think. All right. So my name is Ominini. I have a degree in business administration. And for the past 10 years, I've been in the tech space. I've been working as a business analyst, PM, Scrum Master, whatever the case might be. And I've worked primarily in the financial and insurance sectors, supporting IT projects. In my last role at RBC, I led a project to streamline the claims processing system, and the result was a 20% reduction in processing time. I was able to do that because I have a strong background in data analysis using SQL, blah, 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 Tableau, and I'm proficient in Microsoft Office Suite, which is primarily what I work out of. Now, outside of work, I have two kids. They keep me very busy. One goes to soccer, one goes to hockey. So I'm a busy sports mom, sports dad, whatever the case might be. But when I have time to myself, I like to unwind by reading a book. Hopefully that answers the question. Is there anything you want me to dive into? Right. So do you see how I was able to answer the question?
Mm-hmm.
There is no need to dive too deep into any specific area, but at the same time, you don't want to stay vague and very open-ended, right? What does vague sound like? It's like, hey, well, I've been working for the past 10 years and yeah, I do business analysis and project management.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I'm really interested in this opportunity because it's the next step in my career. Because so far you haven't told the interviewer anything they can work with. But based on the summary I gave when I answered the question, it was fictional, right? But based on that, the interviewer can even ask follow-up questions, and then you begin to build a rapport that warms up the whole conversation, as opposed to them asking you question, you answer, they ask question, you answer, they ask question, you answer. So as the interviewee, you have an opportunity to shift the dynamic of the conversation. So you're not just being interrogated, but it's more of a conversation. That's the idea. That's how you want this to ideally go. Does that make sense? Do you have any questions, any follow-up on that role play?
Okay, so Omidini, that sounds good, eh? But one thing I wanted to ask is this: when it comes to real life interview, you answered this based on a surface, right? Because there is no role, there is no like it's not like a real life interview that you're answering. But in a real life interview, I understand that it's always good for you to chip in or maybe put some things regarding to the role that you are applying. In that case, you have already answered few of the questions that might come up later on that you will be asked. Because, and another thing I want to find out based on how you responded to your question is you included you having kids and all that keeps you busy. I think you wanted to make it subtle so that it doesn't look like, just to put like a lighter note on it. But in real life interview, you see a lot of people tell you that you have to keep at not discussing, I don't know how to explain it, like pointing out things that is related to the interview that you are, as in to the job role that you are applying for or you are being interviewed for. But from your answer, you just kept it on a surface, like neutral.
So it's a great point you're bringing up, and I've heard all kinds of advice as it relates to interview, including what you've shared. Here's what I want you to do for me. So you've heard my first answer, and to answer your question, I will say exactly that in an actual interview, in a real life interview. That's how I'll answer that question. Now ask me the question again, and I'll answer it the way you're describing that you want me to answer it. And then you tell me which of those two people you're interested in hiring or moving forward in the conversation with.
Hi, Ominini. Can you tell us about yourself?
Yes, so my name is Ominini. I'm a certified business analyst with 10 years experience in the insurance field. I have experience working with clients such as RBC, TD, and BMO doing projects related to claims adjudication systems. I was reading the job description and I noticed you were interested in someone who had analytical skills and experience optimizing business processes, which is something I've done at 5 of my last 6 assignments. Last year, I was able to help RBC achieve 20% reduction in XYZ. Thank you. What's your next question? It's very robotic.
It is, Yeah, I'm not disputing, as in the way you put it right now, I'm not disputing that, but your wrap up, what would you have to say about your wrapping, your ending part?
So what I'll say is always chip in something personal when they say tell me about yourself. Because the
Okay,
question is tell me about yourself. So yes,
okay.
you want to use it as an opportunity to sell your skills and your
Mm-hmm.
experiences, but they want to know who you are as a person, believe it or not.
Yeah.
Right? They need to have something to be able to connect to. Even if they don't, you have to make them connect to you. Because people do business with people they trust. People do business with who they know. So hiring somebody, that's a business transaction. It's an expensive business transaction. So whether or not the interviewer is interested in your kids or your personal life, put something there that will make them, oh, wow, this is a human being. This is a person. This is somebody that's, we can hang out after work and it's not going to be awkward. Like that, you you want their minds to be going in that direction.
Yeah.
Because ultimately it's more of a psychological thing than a logical thing. That's why people hire their friends and they hire people who get referred to them. It's like because they're like, oh, I feel comfortable with this person. If you come in just spewing statistics and facts and repeating your resume to them, you're not going to achieve what you think you're trying to achieve.
Okay. Okay.
Okay.
So yeah, that's still the same question someone has. So it's okay to say something personal like you have kids. Another person said, how do we tie in the introduction to the value we are bringing into the role? Yeah, which literally touch points on all the two things I mentioned before. But again, you've explained it. You said it's okay to like put in some little stuff about yourself so that you don't sound so, too serious and all that. Another person says, I think that's the best way to tell us about yourself. Mm. Lawal, which one are you tilting to? Because I don't know which one. He has already responded in two
The
ways.
last one.
Yeah, the last one sounds more like it to me too.
Yeah.
I don't know.
It sounds more professional for sure. But once again, don't forget you're interviewing against other people. If you interviewed against the first one and that first one was more personable, like I've heard hiring managers tell me things like, oh, I just found that person to be more personable. Like I think there will be a better culture fit. All of those things, there's no logic behind it. There's no numbers. You cannot align that to any specific thing. It's just a feeling. How do you tap into that feeling during your interview? That's what you're trying to do. Somebody said, we make we make buying decisions based on logic and we try to rationalize. I forget how they put it, but essentially, ultimately, what they said was every buying decision is based on feeling, and then we find the logic to back it up. That's ultimately what happens. It's feelings first, and then the logic comes in to back it up. So, as a job seeker, as somebody who is interviewing, you need to tap into that person's feelings, make sure that they're interested in talking to you more or hiring you, and then they will find the logic to back it up. But obviously you'll provide it to them throughout the hiring process. So obviously a lot of questions in the chats, and I wish some of these people will come in to do a role play and we can walk through some of these things in real time.
Please, Mr. Omini, sorry to ship in. Please, the sell yourself questions. Can we add I've been in the country for like 10 years. Can we add it to it or we shouldn't have that?
I'm not sure I fully understand. Do you want to?
Can I help her?
Yeah.
I think she's asking, take for instance, if she has been in this country, and I don't know where she is, but I'm using Canada as an example. If she has been in Canada for like say 10 years, can she include how long she has been in the country? Like saying I've been in Canada for this. Lawal, does that answer was it what you wanted to ask?
Yes, that's what I want to say.
Yeah.
I see. I guess, is there a reason why you feel strongly about including it in there? Like, because maybe there's an underlying issue. Like, is there something underlying that makes you want to say that?
Not really. I remember my lecturer. There is a lady that told us that we can add years. We can add it to it. That's what the lady told me then. when I went for a program, she said we can add years. I was confused too, but
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, it might come down to the delivery, right? So for example, in my prior response, like my first response, if instead of saying outside of work, I have two kids, all of those things, your personal thing might be outside of work. I enjoy learning about the country of Canada, so I go hiking in really cool places. I actually moved to Canada 10 years ago, so for me, it's always a great opportunity to explore the country and all the wonderful places I can, you know, go hiking or go see the coasts and things like that, right? So I wouldn't lead by saying, so my name is Ominini. I've been in Canada for the past 10 years, because the interviewer is going to be, it's like, well, why is that relevant? If you're saying it in the context of something personal, that's different. But if you're saying it as part of your pitch, it's it's a bit confusing. Does that answer your question?
yeah, thank you.
All right. So
Please, I wanted to give it a go, if that's okay, since you were asking for a role play.
yeah, for sure.
Okay,
Thanks for
I
stepping
do
up.
have an interview coming up, and just a bit of a background so that you can give me a feedback. I just finished my program in cybersecurity, although this role is for like a support role.
Yeah.
I don't have any cybersecurity experience, but I do have certifications. So,
Okay.
so if you ask me to tell me about yourself question, I was
Okay.
going to say, my name is Takena. I'm a certified cybersecurity analyst with about 5 years of experience in technical troubleshooting and customer support. In my previous role and my current role, I have been able to maintain about 95% customer satisfaction by solving technical problems. I'm interested in this role because I believe it will give me the opportunity to make an impact in the experiences that customers have in an AI-driven environment. Outside of work, I'm a mom to two energetic toddlers, and I spend my personal time trying to develop myself and also read books.
Good work. Good work. One, stepping up to do the role play, but even with the framework and how you set it up, it sounds really good. Couple of things that I might tweak a little bit is, you started by giving me context that, oh, I don't have any cybersecurity experience. I will remove those things from your mind and have more of a positive first mindset. It's like the role you're applying for it might be a security support role or a cybersecurity support role, and all of your prior roles have been either technical support or customer support. I will just focus on the fact that all of them have support in them, right? So that's where you're starting from. It's like, hey, yes, my name is Takena. I'm a certified cybersecurity professional with over 5 years supporting clients as they navigate difficult situations. In my prior role, I supported XYZ number of clients or XYZ organization, and my ticket close ratio, or I will use a more relevant statistic to the role you're applying for as opposed to customer satisfaction, because in cybersecurity, I don't know how much CSAT is important. So like my ticket close rate or my number of tickets per week or per day or whatever is XYZ. I was able to maintain such a high number because I have a strong background in troubleshooting, in researching using either relevant documentation or online documentation. I'm particularly excited about this opportunity. I like when you did that because whether you like something the company is doing or you like something the role does, but then you bring it back. It's like, I believe my troubleshooting skills and experience over the last 5 years will be relevant to this job, which I understand is XYZ. Outside of work, I'm a proud mom to two energetic toddlers. They definitely keep me busy and always looking out for risks in my environment and how I can mitigate those risks, right? To tie back to cybersecurity a little bit. And then always ask, is there anything you want me to dive into a little bit more about myself? Because there's no way for you to know what exactly they were looking for. So you've given them different things. Always end by asking, is there anything specific you want me to dive into a bit more? Does
Okay,
that help?
thank you. Yes, it does. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you. And great job stepping up to practice. All the best with that interview you have coming up. I saw Cecilia's hand up. Was it Cecilia? Somebody else had their hand up.
That was Cecilia, but I think she's fine. Cecilia, are you okay? So we can continue.
All right, so we're going to go into, can you describe your previous experience at XYZ company? And I chose this question because it's an opportunity for storytelling. It's very easy to, I know last week I spoke about this even with the resume. It's very easy to put your bullet points as gathered requirements from stakeholders, analyze them, put them in Azure DevOps, right? You put all these things, but the person reading or the person listening might not have a clear picture of what exactly you were doing. What was the impact of your role to the organization you were working for, right? That's the real question. And some of the challenges with interviewing might just be with how the questions are framed, but as the person being interviewed, it's the onus is still on you to provide whatever information is needed, right? So when you're asked about your prior experience, you need to minimize the urge to start listing off bullet points of what you did at XYZ Corporation. So an ideal response should sound something like this. In my previous role, I was a XYZ at this company, right? Let's say business analyst at RBC. I was responsible for, see, I was about to do what I say I should not do, but I'll still do it. I was responsible for analyzing business requirements and translating them into technical specifications. The reason why I'm still going to do it is because I'm going to put the information afterwards. Two projects that I worked on were, one, we needed to upgrade our mobile app for personal banking from Drupal 4.7 to Drupal 6.8, whatever those things mean. And the reason why we had to do this upgrade was because Drupal 4.7 was at end of life, and we had 6 months to complete that migration, which meant as the business analyst, I had to speak with all the business lines that tied into the product, ensure that I fully understood what they required from the mobile application. I needed to speak with our technical teams to understand which mobile operating systems were supported by our application and where we had any constraints. And I had to speak with our business leaders as to what the overall cost and impact to the business would be in terms of downtime. Overall, this project was completed in 4 months, and this was partly due to a level of collaboration that was unheard of before, where I was able to pull in people from, retail banking, security leaders into an in-person workshop where we walked through some of the challenges that we had, and we're able to, speed through the project at record pace, right? So I'm trying to make this up on the spot, but you can see how I did not stop at, okay, I analyzed requirements and I translated them into technical specifications, all of those things. I was able to paint a clear picture of, okay, this is the project that we're supporting. This was the impact to the business. This is why we absolutely needed to do that project, right? So for me as an interviewer, what that does for me is, well, yeah, we do have a similar project. Our, Windows 10, Microsoft has sent this email that Windows 10 is end of life in October, and we need to upgrade it to Windows 11. I think that's going to be the first project I'm going to give to a BA that I'm going to hire. And since you've done a similar project, it's not the exact same thing, but the way you've described it, it kind of matches what I need. I'm more inclined to continue that conversation with you. Does that make sense? Does anybody have any questions on how to describe your prior experience? The other thing I did as well with that example was I leveraged the STAR methodology, which I'm sure a lot of you have heard about the STAR methodology. So there are 4 components that need to be included when you're telling a story as such. What was the situation? What were the tasks that you needed to do? Or what were the tasks that were assigned to you? What actions did you take? And what were the results? Right? That's the STAR methodology. All 4 of those things need to be present when you're telling a story about your experience or something you've done in the past or how you handled the situation in the past. Anything as such, you need to make sure you have your situation, tasks, actions, and results present in that story. So when you're working on drafting your script or you're refining your script, make sure you're auditing or you're checking your answers to make sure, okay, well, does this story or does this example, does it capture all of these things or does it not? Is it too high level? Is it too surface level? Am I going too much in the weeds? That's a good framework to use to make sure you cover all the important components. And then I will still challenge, for this question and every question really, always ask a question back at the end. It's like, anything you want me to dive into a bit more about this opportunity? Was there something you saw in my resume that you wanted me to hit on that I haven't covered? is this something you've dealt with in your organization? How did you deal with it, right? Interview them back, right? Interview is not a one-way street. While they're checking to see if you're a good fit for them, you should also be checking to see if they're a good fit for you. So don't be afraid to ask questions. Don't be afraid to throw things back at the interviewer. That's part of why you're there anyway. Does anybody have any questions about that one? Or does anybody have any questions from interviews that they'd like to cover in terms of how to respond to the question, or how to maybe deal with, like Tekena mentioned in her case, she felt like she did not have enough experience in that field, like how to deal with stuff like that. Does anybody have any such questions to go over?
Do we have any questions, guys? I think nobody has questions.
Okay. So we'll do one more role play on interviews, and it's going to be I think it was the 6th question I mentioned at the beginning. It's how do you handle conflicts with different stakeholders on the job? Part of why I bring up this one, it could either be this one, whether it's handling conflict or how do you deal with change, like change in the project scope or change in the requirements and stuff like that. Part of why I bring it up is because what I've noticed in some interviews is when the client asks this question, what the client is asking for is, well, does this person know any of the common methodologies that exist in their industry? Or are they just going to say a bunch of different things? Right. So if they ask you, how do you manage change? Your answer should not be, well, change is inevitable, right? I adapt to change. You just talk to people, figure out why they're changing, and then, you deal with it, right? As long as everybody's on the same page. Right? That's not what that question is asking for. What it's asking for is if you have any effective change management methodologies in your tool belt that you're bringing to the company. Okay. Right? So something like that will be, how do I deal with change? Yeah, that's a great question. When I was starting to become a business analyst many years ago, one of the things we covered were ProSci change management frameworks. And, during that time, I never knew how important it would be until I landed my first job as a business analyst and requirements were changing every other week. I had to take a step back and look to leverage the things I learned about the ProSci change management framework or any other project change management framework, right? It's a 7-step process. You need to do it, boom, 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 X, Y, Z. And that's exactly what I did in that engagement. Now, recently, we had a very similar situation in my last job where there was a change in the desired outcome from the project, whatever. The major stakeholder decided that they no longer wanted a mobile app for iOS, that they wanted a PC app for Windows. And obviously, that's a very big change, to change in the technology stack. And yes, I was able to leverage the ProSci framework, but I had to make some adjustments to how I leverage the framework. For example, number 2 step in this framework really did not apply to this organization because they have whatever constraints. So the idea there is that you're showing the interviewer that you understand a framework for change management. You're not just winging it, right? Because that's the last thing. Like I said, hiring somebody is a very expensive business transaction. They don't want people to come in and wing things. They need to see that you have tested and tried, whether it's methodologies, toolkits, frameworks available in your tool belt. I think somebody was trying to say something while I was speaking.
Okay, sorry, I was trying to take you back. We have a question, and it's on your previous interview question. So it says, I often struggle differentiating between task and action while trying to respond. Could you use your last response to help differentiate?
Yeah, both of those things sound very, very similar. And sometimes the STAR methodology has a different acronym, but I'll say tasks are typically things that are assigned to you, in the sense that as a BA, your tasks are to gather requirements and run JAD sessions and maybe do some UAT work and all of those things. Actions are things you kind of took initiative to do, to whether it's to overcome a roadblock or an obstacle or to drive things forward at a faster pace or to accelerate things, right? So in my previous example, the tasks I had mentioned were the things like gathering requirements and meeting with stakeholders. But the action that I mentioned was I was able to get all the relevant parties to the same room. That's an action I took. It's an initiative I took to try to overcome the constraint of time that we had, where we had just 6 months to do that migration. Right. So that's how I think about the difference between tasks and actions. Hopefully that answers Janet's question. Yeah, perfect.
Thank you.
All good. All right. So obviously very silent scrutiny. Hopefully you guys have taken some things from what we've been talking about. And maybe if there's any last minute questions, any questions that anybody has that I've not touched on or covered, feel free to put in touch chats. We can cover it, but we're coming right on 8:25 here, so I want to be mindful of time.
Okay, there's a question. Why should we hire you? How do we navigate answering that question?
Yeah, why should we hire you? That's a very direct question. Whenever I see or hear direct questions, my first instinct is you need to soften the blow. You need to dampen it. Like either you make a joke or you kind of absorb it a little bit. So if somebody asks me that question in an interview, why should we hire you? My first response would be, well, you really don't have to do anything, right? Obviously, it's up to you to decide if you want to hire me or not. But here's what I bring to the table. Here's why I think I'd be a good fit for this role. Why do I tee it up like that? Because why should we hire you just sounds way too direct. It sounds almost confrontational. So you want to kind of soften it a little bit by saying something like that, right? And then you segue into a more courteous like dialogue of here's what I bring to the table. Here is why I'm interested in this role. Here is why I think I'd be a great fit for your organization or for this role or for this team, because I have done XYZ, have experience in all of these things. I have this certification, right? Whatever is in the job description, you're able to bring that to the forefront. And then actually, before I forget, the question you ask at the end will also kind of help with this is, why are you looking to hire somebody? What are some things you're looking for in an ideal candidate? Feel free to always throw it back at the hiring manager or the client or HR recruiters, whatever. All right. So after you've done your part, you throw it back to them. It's like, what are you looking for? Why should I work with you? Like, how do you lead? What's your management style? Like, right. So the last thing you want to do in an interview is just kind of be in the hot seat and get interrogated like you're in the police station. Like that's not ideal for anybody, right? So figure out ways to manage that dynamic in a way that keeps the conversation flowing. Two-way conversation. It's a dialogue, right? So that's what you want to do. Any other questions?
So do you have to wait till when they say, are there any questions for us, or immediately you finish answering, you throw the question back at the interviewer?
So sorry, Tekena, I did not hear your question clearly.
You said to ask the interviewer questions. Do you wait till when they are done asking you questions and say, do you have any questions for us? Or is it after you finish answering?
Don't wait for them to ask you for questions. It's most times they'll wait till there's 2 minutes left and then they'll ask you for questions. If they say, why should we hire you? After you give your response, you ask them a question. Whatever they ask you, feel free to ask them follow-up questions. Bisola said I should give a sample answer to why should we hire you? So why should we hire you? Well, you really don't have to do anything you don't want to do. But here's why I think I'd be a good fit for this business analyst position at Wealthsimple. Over the past 10 years, I've worked exclusively in the finance and insurance industry as a business analyst and a product owner. And I've done everything from retail banking to wealth management and life insurance. In my role as a BA, what I've done typically involves system upgrades, system implementation, or general business process reengineering. And what I bring to the table is, one, I'm certified in business analysis. I'm certified in financial securities. I'm certified in cybersecurity or whatever else is relevant to the role. And that took me years to achieve, both working on the job, taking exams, taking classes. And I think bringing that level of experience to your team at Wealthsimple will definitely set it apart from what the average person might be able to bring to the table. Why do I say that? In my last role, I helped RBC reduce their time to market by almost 6 months because of effective stakeholder management and requirements gathering on their project to implement a new XYZ application, right? So that's the level of expertise I bring to the table. If you're looking for, an average or generic business analyst, I don't think I'm the best person for that role. But if you're looking for a specialist who can help drive projects forward in an accelerated fashion, minimize project delays because of effective stakeholder management, I think I'd be able to help you out in that regard. Hopefully that answers your question, but I'm also curious, like what's your management style? What would I want to work for you, Mr. and Mrs. Clients? And then let them answer. Right. So that's one way to answer the question, and kind of put it back on the interviewer afterwards. Ultimately, hopefully it came across that the delivery is as important as the message, because you can ask the same question and the interviewer will think you're like, oh, that's rude. Like, why would you ask me that question? But it's all about the delivery. You take pauses, right? You speak in a very calm tone, not in an aggressive tone, things like that. So you smile, you laugh. If you say something that's maybe you're trying to lighten the mood, make sure they know that that's what you're doing. So just in case they didn't catch your joke or whatever it is that you tried, just make sure they know and it's clear. In terms of like final tips for interview success, what I'll say, always follow up with a thank you email. Right. Thank you to the people that interviewed you. Thank you to the people that set up the interview. Right. Thank you to anybody who referred you to the company. Right. Send thank yous to as many people as possible. Right. And then always keep refining and practicing your script after every interview. Right. If you struggled with anything in your script during this interview, go back in there and refine it. Maybe the way you worded it doesn't sound like you. So you need to figure out what your voice actually sounds like, and you reward it and you practice it some more. That's the best way, I think, to beat out your competition in an interview. And then overall, just stay positive and confident. Like positivity and confidence are contagious. Like, if you lead with negative statements and you lead with, things like non-confident posture, it's reflected in the interview. And people feel that energy, right? And they don't want to work with people who are not confident or not positive. So stay positive, stay confident. Those will really go a long way in setting you apart.
Ms. Sola, does that answer your question? Okay, do we have any more questions?
Can I ask a question? So if we are being asked that, is there anything outside of our resume that we haven't said or mentioned? Can you give us a suggestion on maybe what to touch on that will still sound professional and related to the role?
So anything outside your resume, if the hiring manager asks you that question, I might ask for clarification. Is there something specific you're looking for?
Okay.
Outside my resume, outside of work, I typically spend a lot of time with family. I typically go hiking. Like I'll go personal again, but then I'll come back and like, unless there's something specific you're looking for, right? Or if you volunteer, that's also something to talk about. If you're taking classes that are not on your resume, that's also something to talk about. But it's important to ask for clarification when they ask for something like that, because it sounds like they're fishing for something. So maybe just try to know what exactly they're looking for.
Okay, so a follow-up question would work best to know which direction to talk to.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
There's a question
we have another
interviews.
question.
Yeah, like send an email to all the people who are on the panel. Thank them for their time. And for the panel interview, it's actually a good opportunity to show that you did some good active listening, where it's like if the panel was made up of 3 people, address each person specifically, like, oh, hey, Karen, I really liked your question about XYZ. Oh, Philip, your story about this, whatever, that was really cool. And David, thank you so much for your time. I loved XYZ that you did during the interview. Like that's a great opportunity to show that you are actively listening to everybody. You remember their stories and what they spoke about. So definitely send emails to everybody. Like I'll CC all of them in the same one email as opposed to sending individual emails.
Okay, so we write one email and CC all of them in the same email.
Yeah. Okay. And thank you emails. It's a great way to answer questions that you feel like maybe you did not answer properly during the interview, right? Maybe before you conclude the email, like just to circle back on your question about this, whatever topic, I felt like I didn't quite answer it to the best of my ability. But here is the essence of what I was trying to get to. This is how I'll handle XYZ, right? So it's a great way to fix some errors you might make, but typically just one thing. Don't use it to answer all the questions again.
Are we good?
Looks like it.
Okay.
Oh no,
Okay, there's a question. Yeah. Okay, please go ahead.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes,
Yeah.
we can.
Okay, thank you. Sorry, excuse me. Thank you very much, Ominine. And my question is not about the interview questions. I just want to ask about last time you said you're going to tell us how to network. Sorry, I
Yeah.
joined it. I don't know if that was said in the beginning.
Yeah. So we didn't have enough time to go into networking today, but a lot of what we spoke about will apply in networking situation. It's all about your delivery and your preparation, right? So when I spoke about tell me about yourself, that's a great way to introduce yourself at a networking event, right? So when you walk up to somebody, maybe you guys are both serving yourself drinks or dishing some food, and you strike up a conversation like, oh, why are you here for the networking event? And regardless of what they ask, all they're trying to find out is, well, who are you? What do you do? Why are you here? Right. So it's a great way to pitch, oh, my name is Ominini. This is what I do, right? This is what I do outside of work. I really love this event because XYZ, right? So a lot of what we spoke about today applies there. I'll say the one thing that's I maybe I'd not cover is how do you build that follow up and enter into some kind of a routine. In the past, there was the exchanging of business cards, and then you go back and then you send emails. Now everything is all on the mobile devices. You connect on LinkedIn, maybe exchange phone numbers, and then you send a quick message or a quick email or a quick message on LinkedIn, like, hey, thanks for connecting, or it was great meeting you at the event. I really liked XYZ that we spoke about. Let's keep in touch, right? So the idea is you keep building out your network, but in your conversation with them, you need to find common ground. That's the biggest part of networking. If you're talking to people and neither of you feels like there's any common ground, that interaction will not last long, right? But if you're able to find something that you can connect on, which is where those personal anecdotes really come in handy, right? Whether you're connecting on the personal level, like both having kids, or both you enjoy hiking, or you both enjoy Bruce Willis movies, like that's where you can really build a connection with people. The other thing about networking is that it's a long-term game. You're not networking so that they help you get a job tomorrow, right? You're networking to build a relationship that's maybe 12 months down the line, they help you land the job. Maybe never they help you land the job. Maybe you're the one who helps them land the job. You have to go into the interaction with an agnostic mindset. Like, you're not there to have them help you. You're there to actually network and build a professional connection. That's the thing about networking, because eventually when either you help them or they help you, it will be very organic. It to be like, oh, this person, or this company, that's something I was trying to get into. Do you think you can help me get there? Right? It's going to happen in a more organic fashion, as opposed to if you're talking to them because they already work at the place that you want them to refer you to. If you want that kind of direct connection, it's a different kind of interaction, right? So I've had people reach out to me that say they want to come work as recruiters at TEKsystems. They'll reach out to me like, hey, on LinkedIn, like, hey, I'm a recruiter at this company. I'm looking for a change or whatever. Is TEKsystems hiring? It's a very direct conversation. If you try to mask that in networking, people can tell, and it just kind of sours the relationship. So if you need direct help, it's much better to go direct, make your ask, and kind of move on, regardless of the outcome. Hopefully that answers your question. We don't have enough time to kind of dive into how to network effectively and things like that, but that's kind of the synopsis of that.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
All right. Thank you so much, Eka, for holding on. So I see some couple of questions.
I think you should start from what is the time frame to follow up after an interview?
After an interview. Okay. Hello,
After the interview, that's something you discuss either during the interview or with the HR recruiter person that set up the interview, right? It's like when they ask you, do you have any questions for me? One of the questions can be, when can I expect to hear back? Is it okay if I follow up after maybe 24 hours after you tell me I expect to hear back, right? So that's something to ask directly during the interview. If you forget to do that or you don't do it, and maybe 48 hours or 1 week has passed, depending on the organization and the role, I'll say that's a good time to check in. Now, if it's a government role you applied for and interviewed for, those hiring cycles takes months sometimes. So if you follow up in 1 week or 2 weeks, it doesn't matter. There will be no update for you. So you just have to kind of be mindful of that. And it's why it's important to ask during the interview process when I can expect to hear back.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Then another question from Felicia. She's asking, what should be the ideal response on how to manage conflict during the interview?
Yeah, so I kind of covered this one when I spoke about the change management.
Before.
So
Okay.
yeah, this is where you're dealing with you have to show that you have a framework or a methodology that's tested and tried by the industry you work in, right? It cannot just be something where you're winging it and you're talking about how, oh, well, I just talk to people and I try to understand what motivates them. You have to come with a very concrete framework for conflict management or change management or stakeholder management, right? So that's where that comes in. I don't have any specific answers because it's all based on different industries.
All right. Thank you. Then another question from Lawal. Describe a time, that is a question. Describe a time when you had to manage multiple tasks with a competing deadline.
Yeah, so
how do I answer this? She's asking.
This is a great question for the STAR methodology, right? So what was the situation, or your tasks, or your actions? What was the result? So situation, in my last role, you had to manage multiple tasks. So in my last role, I was working as a project manager and I was managing multiple projects that had very close deadlines. One of the deadlines was in August. One of the deadlines was at the beginning of September. And both of these were enterprise-wide initiatives. The first one was to implement Microsoft 365 as our official enterprise application. And the second one was to implement Microsoft Sentinel as our cybersecurity tool for event monitoring, right? Both of these projects had visibility all the way up to the C-level executives. My role as project manager was to keep things on track, make sure I managed the budget properly, and make sure the scope was always in check with all the relevant stakeholders. What I did to make sure that we kept both of these projects on track was I was able to leverage a tool called Jira to build out project dashboards for blah, blah, blah. Make sure all the relevant stakeholders were looped in on the Jira board and it was integrated to their calendars for automated reminders for action items and deadlines. And that helped me reduce the time I spent chasing people in meetings to get updates from both of those projects. And the result was that both of those projects were delivered in the first week of August, right? So one of them 4 weeks ahead of schedule, one of them 2 weeks ahead of schedule. And both were implemented with, customer satisfaction scores in the high 90s, right? So that's a great question where you implement this STAR methodology as your framework.
Great. Thank you, Ominini. I think so far we don't have any other question on the chat. Okay. All right. Thank you, everyone. I just wanted to find out, based on what all the conversations we've had so far, let me know in the chat, how has it been with us? Was it really impactful? Did we gain one or two things regarding to all this conversation? There might be some questions that doesn't have like a straightforward answer to it. It all depends on what you are going in for, the role and all that. Then you will be able to craft whatever answer you are going to give it. But based on all the questions that we've thrown at Ominini this night, did he do justice to them? Or should we retain him and ask him to make sure he answers all those questions correctly? Please, we want to hear from you. Drop in the chat and we'll be so glad to hear from you. Yes, Lawa said, yes, I gained a lot today. Thank you, Ominini. She's also saying thank you. Eka said, thank you, Ominini. And we have Cecilia as well saying thank you, Ominini. I see Janet said, thank you, Ominini and Wintech. It was a very helpful, It was a very helpful section, and the emphasis on how we deliver being important. Yeah. Another person from Jumbo says, I've gained a lot today. Thank you to Mininis and the organizing team. Thank you. Fisola said, thank you to the organizers. The section was very impactful. Then Felicia says again, thank you, Ominini. Thank you so much, everyone. And we are so glad. At this point, I'm going to give the floor to Eka to help us and wrap up the section while we say a big good night to everyone. I know the chats are still coming up. Let's keep them coming, okay? Let's keep them coming. I love that. All right. Thank you, everyone. Eka, over to you, please.
Thank you, Wendy, and thank you, Minini. You can see from the chat that we are all fired up to go to the interview rooms to deliver. So on behalf of the entire WINTECH community, I would like to say thank you to you for not just showing up, but you poured out a lot to us, and you've literally walked us through every critical stage of the hiring journey, from the resume that speaks loudly last week to the LinkedIn profiles that opens opportunities to us, and now to interviews that we can say we can boldly conquer. You didn't just teach us how to answer questions. You taught us that our value isn't just in our years of experience. You know, as you taught Tekena when she talked about her not having experience, but in the confidence we bring to the table and how we own our stories. You've helped us to silence some doubts that we have in our minds, to sharpen our pitches and to show up boldly, speak authentically, and also own the room even before we walk into it. So from all of us, ambitious and tech-loving ladies in this community, we want to say thank you. Then to all the ladies in the house, let's take what we've learned into every room, every Zoom call, and every network opportunity. Organizations are waiting for women like us who are equipped, confident, and powerful. Let's go out there and take up those great job opportunities. So we would like to give a virtual round of applause to Ominini. So send in your emojis. Ominini, we are really thankful, and we look forward to more opportunities to collaborate with you. Thank you all, and see you at the top.